First and foremost, at the top of the docket, we're going to be talking about Hunter Schafer. Hunter Schafer is amazing. I love her. She is my queen. I have a standing invite, an open invite to Hunter Schafer to come on the broadcast anytime, any place. I will go to her if she needs it. I would love to have her on the broadcast. Obviously, she's amazing. And don't get like weird thoughts in your mind. It's not because she's insanely hot. Obviously, that is not a bad thing, but also because she literally got arrested for protesting Israel at 30 Rock. That was awesome. That was very cool. She has not replied to my DMs. It's fine. I'm not hurt by it. You know, she's probably too busy doing movies and also getting her feet scanned by Hideo Kojima. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. I'm not disappointed that she has not replied to my DMs. She's probably very busy and also, you know, working on stuff. But like I said, open invitation to Hunter Schafer whenever she wants, anytime, any place, to come on the HasanAbi broadcast. All right. As we talked about before, the Trump administration did a bunch of insane things, and one of the first executive actions they took was to, for no real reason whatsoever, declare that there are only two genders, and also you have to forcibly have your gender be your gender assigned to you at birth. And for that reason, of course, many trans people who had to go and get new passports in this new administration literally got the wrong sex on their passports. Hunter Schafer is a prominent and very famous example of that. Here she is talking about her experiences. Let's take a look.
Hello, internet. I don't really post much these days, but I had a bit of a harsh reality check today and felt like it's important to share with whoever is listening. So I'm sure most of us remember on, I think, the first day of Trump's presidency, he signed an executive order to declare only two genders recognized by the state, male and female, assigned at birth.
Yeah, for the record, if you're wondering, what's the point of all this? It's cruelty. Literally nothing else. It's such a hollow, such a shallow, pointlessly, unnecessarily cruel thing to do. And also, not only is it cruel, but it's also obviously unproductive. It's unproductive and chaotic because absolutely zero people look at Hunter Schafer and go, that's a man. Okay. No one does that because gender at the end of the day, no matter how much Republicans or dumbasses online claim is directly associated with your sex, it's biology. It is a social construct. It is what you wear. It is how you present yourself. It is how you carry yourself. And of course, for that reason, we don't, do penis checks or pussy checks before we have normal interactions with other people in the real world. We just assume, okay, this person is a woman. Okay, gender is performative. It is a performance. But this misunderstanding has caused many people to behave in ridiculous ways. And of course, passing is not the end all be all. For those of you who say, oh, well, it's, you're just only talking about people who pass or whatever. It's just that it is a very good entry point into the conversation for many people. Okay. For the average transphobic person, it's a really solid entry point into the conversation. Okay. Because it bricks their brain in the opposite direction. When you show them someone like Hunter Schafer, and then you're like, you have to call this person a man now. They go, what are you saying? That doesn't make any sense. That is why I talk about it from this perspective. It's an entry point. It's not the end all be all before people go crazy over it. Anyway, let's take a look.
And as a result of this, which I wrote down because I want to get it right, the Bureau of Consular Affairs has frozen passport applications requesting a gender marker change or renewals or new applications with a gender marker differing from an applicant's gender assigned at birth. So my initial reaction to this, because our president is a lot of talk, was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And today I saw it on My new passport.
Like, this is such a insane thing to do. What absolute insanity. Hunter Schafer's from New Jersey, and she still hasn't been on the broadcast. We have touched the same soil. I mean, what more? What more has to happen here? Okay, that's what it says on my passport too. You know, mine says New Jersey, USA as well. Okay, I'm just saying.
Male. So now to specify, my gender markers were first changed in my teens when I first got my driver's license, and then passports following. All have been female since then. Hasn't really been a problem. However, last year when I was filming in Barcelona, our car got broken into and my bag got stolen, and inside of that was my passport, which was supposed to last me up until my 30s.
I'm confused. While perverse enough, I thought the executive order simply said that there were two genders, not that someone who was once one sex and has become another cannot stay that gender. Anytime someone says anything about gender in the opposite direction as the wokes, they just mean like they want to shit on trans people. Just like when people talk about fairness in sports, they don't actually care about fairness in women's sports. They just don't want trans people to exist. And this is a permissible way to say trans people. That's it. I've tried to explain this to people over and over again. Some people might genuinely think this conversation is actually about fairness in sports. Like, they might have actually been lost in the sauce. There are plenty of people like that. Okay, plenty of people think, on the one hand, trans people are unfairly discriminated against, and secondly, they should be nowhere near any athletic endeavor. That is real. That's a real person. That is the average American person, the median position. Having said that, the conversation was started specifically on the boundaries of finding new ways to say trans people should be eradicated from public existence. That's it. And that is precisely what's going on here as well. They'll say, oh, only two genders. Come on, that makes sense. And then they'll turn around and go, also, if you are a trans woman, you're going to have male on your passport. If you are a trans man, you're going to have female on your passport. Doesn't make sense. It's about trans women specifically. Trans men are still allowed in men's sports. Yeah, but it's also just simply trans women participating in sports is not about fairness in sports, okay? That's just a way to traffic this issue in a way that is permissible and dare I say popular in broader public opinion. It's just about saying trans people are weird, gross, and immoral and shouldn't exist. That's it. That is the entire purpose of it. Yes. Obviously, people like Hunter break the brains of many average Americans due to the fact that not only do they pass, but also are insanely pretty. But beyond that, trans men also, in a similar vein, break Americans' brains. Like, they can't comprehend it. They can't understand it. It's still, like I said, an entry point into the conversation for many people who are just like oblivious to how these things work. But ultimately, all of the legislation or executive actions that push for this kind of thing are not actually done on the real boundaries that they're talking about. It's not about like making sure that everybody only has like one or two, making sure that everybody's either a male or a female. Like, that's not it. It's just being transphobic and trying to legislate away trans people. That's all it is.
So I got an emergency passport, which was very simple at the time. It's basically just a copy of my old passport, but temporary and only supposed to be used within the year. So as soon as I got back to the States, I had to get this fixed and get it replaced with a real proper passport, which I went to Federal Passport Agency today in LA and did. I've had to do this one time before. No part of the process was different. I filled everything out just like I normally would. I put female, and when it was picked up today and I opened it up, they had changed the marker to male. And I'm not making this post to fearmonger or to create like drama or receive consolation. I don't need it, but I do think it's worth posting to sort of note the reality of the situation and that it is actually happening. And I was shocked because I didn't I don't know. I just didn't think it was actually going to happen. And like, I want to acknowledge my privilege, like not only as a like famous or like celebrity trans woman who is white and thin, and
also for the record, like, I think the point here is like, at least from where I'm standing, like if it happens to her, which of course it was going to happen to her, because she is trans at the end of the day, it can have, like, think about how much harder it is for the average trans person who also doesn't have the same finances that she has, or didn't have understanding parents early on that were obviously super woke and allowed her to take hormone blockers initially, like puberty blockers initially, or some trans people that don't want to completely pass. Like, there's a variety of different factors here at play, and it is infinitely harder for everybody else. That's why I think it's important for public figures like this to actively come out and speak on their experiences.
Can adhere to like contemporary beauty standards, and I can participate in all of that, and I pass, and it still happened. Yeah, I never had my birth certificate changed. So this has led me to believe that I think the agencies who are in charge of passports and this sort of thing are now required to cross-reference birth certificates, or I don't know exactly what or what changed as far as the processing goes, but
yes, they put an M on her passport. It's unnecessarily complicated. There is literally no reason to do this. Like, whenever I think about any sort of government decision, the good is supposed to outweigh the bad, right? The good is supposed to outweigh the bad. Like, that's how it's supposed to work, because any matter of rules and restrictions and regulations actually end up restricting restricting to a certain degree people's freedoms, but it's appropriate and understandable when it is for the greater good. That is at the heart of how we legislate. That is at the heart of why we make certain decisions. And you're supposed to democratically vote on the government to make these kinds of decisions and yada, yada, yada. But this kind of action is not even remotely good. Like, what are the benefits? What are the benefits other than if you're a transphobic person, you're like, hell yeah, we're owning them. Hell yeah, we're dominating them. You know what I mean? I guess that's it. That's the only thing that comes out of it. And there are many issues, many complications that arise when you make these kinds of decisions. Like, when she travels now, if she goes to any other country, she's at the mercy of the border guards there. Like, they might actually give her issues, right? Because of the sex marker on her passport. Everywhere that she has to use her passport, she is going to run into issues.
This is the first time, excuse me, this has happened to me since I changed my gender marker. We're coming up on a decade now or something. And I do believe it is a direct result of the administration our country is currently operating under.
Personally, I've just never found gender, trans, queer discourse is interesting. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fine. But there are plenty of people in here that do care about it. Also, you're talking about like colonialism and stuff. Here, I'll give you one example. Palestine skate game. Countries that were not victim to Western colonialism oftentimes have very different attitudes about gender, or countries that are removed from, or countries that are far away from Western influence, unironically have very different attitudes about gender and queerness in general. That in and of itself, I think, is should probably explain to you that like our current understanding of gender, like being a rigid binary, unironically is reinforced in perpetuity by Western colonialists. Let people live is my argument always. Okay. If you want to think about it from the perspective of like colonial domination, yes, the rigid binary, the rigid binary that is enforced upon people is a remnant of old, antiquated Western supremacist colonial actions. I'm not even just talking about like indigenous people either. I'm talking straight up, like, look at Thailand. Okay. Thailand is a great example. Look at Iran. And there are plenty of issues in terms of sexuality in Iran and even in terms of gender in Iran as well. But like every country has their own set of problems. But ultimately, their existence, the concept of even like third gender, for example, in places like India, I think should help you realize that gender as an expression is very different elsewhere. It's been different throughout time, and that our modern attitudes have nothing to do with the reality or nothing to do with biology in general. As an AFAB, MB therapist that works with only trans clients, there's so much I can say, but one thing I feel is extra important is to mention that transphobia harms everyone. Exactly. That is something that I stress regularly. A prime example being that a female athlete from the Olympics was harassed, sorry I'm blanking on her name, for many reasons we should all care about this. Exactly. Trans people are a tiny sliver of the population. Oftentimes it's considered to be like the fanciful Western luxury that is created of trans people, right? Like people look at it and go, oh, this is just like white Western queers, like they're rich, they're labor aristocrats, they're living in the heart of empire, they got no issues, so they're just like trying to bring up new issues. Like that is the broadest way that people look at trans people in a negative fashion. And what's interesting about it is that, one, that's not the case for cultures throughout time and even cultures that exist right now. So obviously it's unironically transphobia in and of itself, and the restrictions upon expressions of gender and expressions of sexuality that are old relics of Western empire for the most part. But beyond that, considering that trans people are a tiny margin of the population overall, consistently hyper-focusing on them and trying to dominate them in this way unironically ends up harming cis people, because there's just simply a lot more cis people than there are trans people. And because gender in and of itself is simply an expression, and that no one really fits the rigid binaries that people claim it exists out there, then cis women that are athletic get owned in the marketplace of ideas. People just assume that they're trans. Look at all the TERFs in England. None of them pass. They're all cis women. Not a single one of them passes. Much to consider here. And it's interesting because I think TERFs, especially TERFs that are, that don't fit this rigid standard that they claim exists out there, and that it's like completely biological, assume that if there was a full-blown eradication of transness, that like people would never suspect them of being trans potentially, but they don't realize that like it has nothing to do with someone's actual gender expression and everything to do with like dominating people. This is why I always say it's not being trans that is a mental illness. It is transphobia that is a mental illness, because the starting point is inherently mistaking something that is a social construct with biology, and then, you know, leading down this like very weird path where, because gender is so closely associated with your identity, you end up seeing trans people in the shadows, basically. That's where you arrive at transvestigation, which is the highest state of transphobia. And transvestigations, the concept of suspecting any and every person of being trans, potentially, makes you an insane person. There are transvestigators out there who literally think their own parents, they suspect their own parents of potentially being trans. They inevitably suspect themselves as being trans, potentially. It's a hyperfixation, and it leads you further and further astray. It leads you down this mental illness pipeline. So I always say, let it go. Let people exist. You know, give them room to breathe.
And I guess I'm just sort of scared of the way this stuff like slowly gets implemented, because things just sort of like start happening. I think as we've seen in like historical rises of fascism and this sort of everything that this new administration.
Please address the fact that this entire argument is based on the difference between sex and gender, and the passport says sex on it. Are we going to ignore that? This could be solved by adding a line to the document to differentiate between the two. It doesn't matter, because everybody understands that what is on the passport is just simply gender. This is not like a semantics argument that these guys had a oopsie on, okay? They're very clearly, very deliberately putting that there and changing it by force. And also, even sex is not a binary. So what do you do then? Like, even the biological aspect of sex is not a binary. They used to say that only two genders, man and woman, sex. Then they had to learn more about, they've had to forcibly change the conversation. Ben Shapiro went from calling sex binary. Ben Shapiro first said it's gender is binary. Then, of course, they had to change the conversation a little bit to say, oh no, that's just sex. Sex is biology, gender is something different, but it doesn't matter. Sex is associated closely with your gender. Then they had to also say, okay, maybe sex itself, considering intersex people, considering all this other stuff, is also not a binary either. So now they say it's what is it? Bimodal. Like, there's two planks that you are either close to or not. Give it 10 more years, they'll be talking about abolishing gender at this point. You know what I mean? Because you just can't deny it. You can't deny the reality. It's just the cat's out of the bag. You know what I mean? Cat's out of the bag. You just can't do anything about it. There's no way to just, like, unless you do forcible suppression, which is what the administration wants to spend its limited resources on, seemingly, you're not going to be able to get away from this reality. You know, people are trans. They've always been trans, and they're going to continue being trans. That's it. Just like people are gay, and they're always going to be gay. There are excellent courses on gender out there, and I believe the MB folks have real pain and real experience. I just think eventually we're going to be like, oh no, we went all in on this and failed to center acute forms of socioeconomic pain. No, I rarely ever talk about trans issues specifically from the perspective of identity. And I always maintain the position that, like, when you're doing advocacy or when you're writing policy, when you're trying to win elections, I don't center trans people and defending trans people as the main point of contention, because I'm not a f***ing Democrat. I'm not a f***ing liberal. I often will remind people that all of these things that are being done for the sake of pure cruelty and nothing else is being done as a simple distraction, because any kind of cruel action that the administration engages in against trans people like this is a moment that they could be fixing your healthcare, is a moment that they could be fixing the potholes, but they choose not to do that sort of stuff because that would require actually governing for the population and not just simply using the government as a way to distribute more wealth and resources back to the most powerful people on this planet. And that trans people do not exist in a magical space outside of the regular economic pressures that everyone else experiences. Trans people are working in the workforce alongside all of you. Trans people also have to pay rent. Trans people also have the same exact issues, relationship issues, monetary problems. They experience all of this alongside you. But then on top of that, they also have this additional problem that they have to deal with, which is why I often say it's none of your damn business. And why do you care? How does this harm you in any way? And that is precisely the reason why Republicans try to find an answer for that desperately. And the only answer they can come up with ultimately is, oh, well, they're all pedophiles or they're all transing the children. It's a falsehood. It's ridiculous. It's a harmful lie that they present over and over again. But they do that for basically everything. Everything has to be built around a complete lie.
There's a lot of talk, and then things start happening, and we start to normalize the circumstances we're under. And I just feel like it's important to share that it's not just talk, that this is real and it's happening, and no one, no matter their circumstance, no matter how wealthy or white.
Yeah, by the way, they did this with gay people too, with the exact same terminology, with the exact same attacks. But because of legislation, well, one, because of activism, and because of people constantly pushing and pushing and pushing, trans people included, once it became impossible to avoid the elephant in the room that gay people do exist, and the American legislative body changed, okay, then it was over. It was done. It was over. So Republicans looked for a new target. They couldn't just as easily shit on gay people now, even though they still try. Make no mistake. They still try. But overall, most people are just like, yeah, I don't care about this. I still believe in my heart that the same will happen for trans people inevitably. But there will always be these kinds of regressive hiccups along the way. But no matter how hard you try, you cannot suppress the truth. Whether it be heliocentrism, or the existence of trans people. You just can't suppress the truth. You can try, you can do as much harm as you possibly can, but the cat's out of the bag.
I also want to say, I don't give a fuck that they put an M on my passport. It doesn't change really anything about me or my transness. However, it does make life a little harder. Personally, I haven't tested it out yet. I'll find out next week when I have to travel abroad for the first time with my new passport. But I'm pretty sure it's gonna come along with having to out myself to like Border Patrol agents and that whole gig much more often than I would like to or is really necessary. And this is just my personal circumstance. And thinking about other trans women who this might also be happening to, or other trans people, you know, the list only gets longer as far as the intricacies that come along with the difficulty that this brings into like real life.
Wait, what? So where was she before? Why didn't she say anything during the election? She's never been an activist. She enjoyed her religious life and never said a word during the election. Now she's surprised by everything. Before the election, Hunter Schafer literally got arrested. What have you done? She got arrested at an anti-Israel protest. What have you done? That's crazy. Like, what do you want her to do? Firebomb the Capitol? Like, what are you talking about? This, in and of itself, despite her rich status, is already putting her in harm's way further. Like, once again, she's outing herself. She's putting herself in a heated political battle that revolves around her identity. What are you talking about? This right here is already the action. Yeah, but being quiet and unaware about trans issues in a trans woman still doesn't make sense. She's cool. Why do you think she's quiet and unaware about trans issues? So it's cool she got arrested for protesting genocide, but this is a weird blind spot. What are you talking about? Why is this the assumption that she is quiet and oblivious to trans issues? What is happening? I can't tell if this is like other trans people getting mad at Hunter Schafer, or if it's just like random woke cis people that are like, she didn't do enough. She didn't vote for Kamala, so now she deserves it. I'm going to misgender her now. Like, what is happening? Galaxy ending woke of the day. Liberals are so crazy. They be putting trans people in concentration camps. And on the way, liberals will be like, well, you deserve it because you didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Like, what the hell?
This is getting very long, but I just want to say, trans people are beautiful. We are never going to stop existing. I'm never going to stop being trans. A letter and a passport can't change that, and this administration. And I don't really have an answer on what to do about this, but I feel it was important to share. This is real.
What are they talking about? She helped with the anti-trans bathroom bill in North Carolina turned over. That was back in 2007 too. She's been an advocate. Yeah. But also back then, she did it selfishly. You understand that there's always something you can say. There's always something you can say, oh, it wasn't enough. Or of course she's going to push for that because it was popular, even if it wasn't, right? It doesn't matter. None of it matters. At a certain point, you have to understand that people are just talking shit because they want to talk shit. They are just trying to moralize it. They're just trying to add something else to the conversation so they can talk shit from a morally righteous position. That's all this is. Also here, another perfect example of like transphobia that is supposed to be protecting women, cis women, not protecting cis women. Here are Tucson cops trying to arrest someone for being in the women's restroom, had to argue for 5 minutes.
They came in here in the girls' restroom because I'm a girl and they didn't think I was a girl. So they try to come take me away because I'm a girl.
Hashtag stud life is awesome. Hashtag stud life is a amazing. Oh my God. You hate men in the women's bathroom, so you transvestigate biological, in air quotes, women, call the cops on them, and check note, invite 2 men to the bathroom men don't belong in to harass the women you claim you want to protect. This is from like 2020. It doesn't matter. It happens all the time, by the way. It's a perfect representation. You got crazy, psychotic, transphobic cis women suspecting like a cis black lesbian woman of being a trans woman, okay? And then calling whole ass dudes into the women's restroom in full cop gear. Do you not understand? That's how it works. This is how it works. This is one of the most foreseeable negative consequences of this kind of unrestricted transphobia. For every trans person that you successfully capture, okay, and successfully harm, you're getting like 100 cis people in the process. Heated exchange between President Trump and Governor Janet Mills over transgender women in sports.
We need people in the country, but they have to come in legally. 2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order banning men from playing in women's.
Dude, once we make sure that trans people don't have the correct gender on their passports and like can't participate, all 40 of them are no longer allowed to participate in sports at all. I promise, chat, trust me, my GOAT, Donald Trump, okay, the legend himself, he is going to floor the egg prices, okay? Rent is going down. Everybody knows every landlord is trans, okay? Obviously, every landlord is trans. So clearly, the price of rent going down. Everybody knows trans people exclusively eat a diet comprised of eggs and nothing else. So egg prices also going down. It's coming down any day now. Any day now. All of your problems are going to be solved now that we got 40 people that participated in athletics out of the equation. It's not even 40 anymore. This year is less than 10 on the NCAA level. This is such a non-issue. Exactly. Oh no, but those 10 people, what if they were too dominant? Which they weren't, by the way, but it doesn't matter.
Many Democrats are fighting me on that. I hope you continue because you'll never win another race. And it's just crazy. If you look at what happened with the boxing, if you look at what happened with the weightlifting numbers, where a record that hadn't been broken for 19 years got shattered. But, they put up an eighth of an ounce here, an eighth of an ounce there, and it's 218 pounds or whatever, a lot. And hadn't been broken in 19 years. And then guy walks up who transitioned. He transitioned, and he knocked out that record by about 100 pounds. That will be a record not going to be broken again.
Lying is OP, please nerf. Lying is OP, please nerf. Mods, lying to OP, nerf. First of all, God forbid any trans person has ever dominated for like one athletic competition ever, one time. Okay, you will never hear the end of it. Out of the limited number of trans athletes that exist out there, they are not dominant, okay, in the field of competition. This is just a lie. And even if they were, I still would not care. I just want to explain this to you. I don't care. People look at this and they go, cheating. It's cheating. It's cheating. People are just transing themselves specifically to win athletic competitions. I don't see it that way. I don't think people are just simply transing themselves, okay? The process is endlessly complicated, and you're f***ing yourself over for no reason other than to win athletic endeavors. You're out of your goddamn mind. Best analogy is someone like Michael Phelps. No, there's an even better analogy. I've talked about this quite a bit. It's Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi actually took a shit ton of hormones initially. Like he took HGH because of his disease, his genetic disease. Barcelona took a massive gamble on him and offered him this like complicated medical process because he was unimaginably talented. Like, but of course that's not seen as quote unquote cheating. And it's fine. There's no issue with this. Like there is no problem with this, okay? People have genetic advantages and people have medical advantages that take place as well, or people to get medical treatment as well that would be considered completely unacceptable. Can you stop giving shitty arguments to Cristiano Ronaldo fans? I mean, I have no issue with Messi and the hormone therapy that he underwent early on in his life. There's no issue with that at all. It is a tiny, minuscule percentage. These people literally personally think that, every athlete is just going to trans themselves, quote unquote. It is a very unpopular subject matter, for the record. I know that. The average person literally does not want a trans person to be anywhere near sports. Okay. They just don't want, especially trans women. They just don't want it because it's a very successful avenue of attack because Americans believe in meritocracy in sports, especially. And when you pair that up with like the assumption that trans people are weird and sinister and transing themselves for a multitude of different reasons and not because they are trans, okay, but for some other secret third reason I will not mention, right? That's like the general attitude. They think, okay, they're transing themselves for sports. there are very prominent examples of how it's virtually impossible to find someone that like unironically trans themselves specifically to win athletic competitions. And that's precisely the reason why the only people that do that are Republican charlatans, the Steven Crowders of the world, who will just be like, we couldn't find a real existing example of someone that like faked being trans because the process is so goddamn complicated and messy to begin with. So, you know, people like Ben Shapiro, who initially wanted to make a documentary on people who are faking being trans or whatever, couldn't find anyone that would go through the process of like actually undergoing HRT. So they just made a movie instead. That's where Lady Ballers came from. They initially wanted to make a documentary. They couldn't find any real existing examples, so they just made it up. This is the whole point. It's the whole process. It's the same principle. I'll give you another example that virtually everyone understands, a more popular position that Republicans have also undermined. Abortions. Republicans lie and say people are getting fun abortions, okay? Republicans make it seem as though people are volunteering to carry pregnancies almost to term for 9 months just to get a fun abortion, just to feel the thrill of getting an abortion. It's ridiculous. It is completely made up. That is not a real thing, except Republicans have repeated that lie so many times that there's enough people that believe it, or even if they don't believe it, they'll point to that to say, this is why we have to, you know, restrict the abortions that people get. I'll just cut my legs off to play in the Paralympics. Exactly. And Republicans endlessly love burning the candle on both ends. If you want to limit the number of abortions that happen, you should be an advocate for sex ed. You should be an advocate for contraceptives and education surrounding contraceptives and the usage of it. But of course, they don't want that either. Lo and behold, they don't want to do that either. And the same goes for the unfair competitive element of trans people in sports. If you want to completely eradicate the unfairness argument in and of itself, then allow people to use puberty blockers. Allow people to use, with obviously rigorous medical examination, to utilize puberty blockers. Hunter Schafer is a great example of what happens when you do use puberty blockers, okay, and can transition. Except they don't want to do that either, because they don't want to actually solve a problem. They want to create a problem when there's no such problem that exists, and then constantly complain about it.
To protect women. I mean, the women, if you watch the Olympics, you had 2 transitioned people that were fighting in the women's boxing. They have women's boxing category. That wasn't even the case. They're just lying. You saw that. It was brutal. What happened to the Italian woman was a really good boxer. After one punch, she said, no more. I've never been hit. It was a left. It was not even it was just a left jab. She got hit so hard, she said, I can't do it. They forced her to go out. No, go out again. You'll do it. Goes out again, gets hit again. No, that's it. She didn't want to die.
That's the craziest part about this also, is that like she's literally Algerian, okay? A country where you definitely can't be trans. So now we are deciding, okay, we're deciding like who out of the cis women, like what level, like what kind of cis women are allowed to compete. We're doing this to protect women, which is why only ladies that I consider to be sexy are allowed to fight now. If I think someone is too good, even if they have a natural advantage, okay? Even if they have a natural advantage, I don't like that. When you get down to it, only white women can be women as their core position. Yeah, it's nuts. Like, you have to also be dainty. If you're a female athlete, you literally can't be brolic because I will suspect you of being trans, and I will, even if you are not, you're delusional. I'm delusional for saying that a Algerian Muslim woman who dominated in the women's boxing division, like I have to just imagine them as being trans because Republicans just don't think that she fits the stereotype of what they consider to be a woman. Like, what am I doing? It's just so crazy because it's like just such a spectacular example of people's lack of interest in the truth. It's just people are not interested in the truth at all. They're like, nah, this lie is actually way better for me. It makes me feel better. So I might as well just keep going with the lie and call everyone delusional. It's also funny because, you know, she's Algerian. Like that's what makes it funnier, because it's like, yeah, dude, Algeria, the woke country, okay? It was proven in leaked medical report that he is a man. Yeah. Hilariously, she's lost several fights to cis women in the past. Well, she's also a cis woman.
Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state has a responsibility to comply with Title IX. They have an obligation, a legal obligation, and we'll be enforcing aggressively, and we're going to be protecting our citizens.
Yeah, no, this is definitely going to fix all of our issues, guys. I promise, any day now. Any day now, okay? Trust. The NCAA has complied immediately. We already watched it. Janet Mills says, yeah, I'm here. Are you not going to comply? I'm going to comply with state and federal law. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all. See you in court. Enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be elected in elected politics. I'm trans and I can confirm that we're responsible for inflation. Look, my point is all of this is obviously very dangerous and very damaging. Very dangerous and very damaging for trans people. But Republicans are wielding this as a weapon, okay? Because they're bullies. They're weak bullies. This is weak bully shit. You attack people that are in the margins when you are a weak person. And the Republicans use this over and over again. They vice signal over and over again deliberately to make people feel like they're actually doing something at the behest of the regular public when the major reasons as to why they won was because the Democrats had no real answers for the inflation crisis that people were experiencing. And the Republicans falsely redirected that anger to trans people and undocumented immigrants. Genuine question, though, who's going to stop them, bullies or not? I mean, I think pushback is an absolute necessity at this point.